Embarking on a journey through the cosmos. Galaxies shine with every step we take. Voyagers of time and space, we wander. Uncharted paths, our destinies will make. Drifting through timelines, drifting through timelines. Stars unfold their stories in the twilight. Travelers intertwining cosmic streams. With every pulse, new horizons waiting. Futures born from yesterday's lost dreams. Drifting through timelines, drifting through timelines. Navigate the solid mysteries. Wormholes flicker, calling us to fly. Every leap a note in endless symphonies. Together we glide through universal seas of stars. Drifting through timelines, drifting through timelines.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my live stream this weekend. And this will be the 8th episode of my discussions of sci-fi TV shows, movies, and pop culture discussions. Please welcome to the panel the one and the only PvP. Hello, PvP. Thanks for stopping by.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, well, I thought I'd try and get on here this week since I haven't been able to make it every weekend. So I thought, what the heck, I haven't been on here for a while. I guess it's been now. So, yeah.
To everyone in the audience, let's give them a nice round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we gotta build up your ego to become the next premier of BC or up there, huh?
Yeah, well, we could certainly use a new premier here in BC. That's for sure. The guy we got in power is not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, when did things become so? I'm gonna say it outright: stupid in the left side sphere of politics.
Well, I guess I could say the same thing down south there. It seems like the left has become increasingly separated from reality, shall I say, over I don't know how many years. It's been probably the last 11. It's gotten really bad here because the federal liberals have pretty much let stupidity run rampant in politics, unfortunately. So there's a few good politicians around here and there, I suppose, still, but they're getting hard to find. They're getting quite hard to find.
Yeah, because my point is, politics used to be at least appear semi-intelligent, but now one side is pure dumb, basically a dumbasses. The other one is competent, but also somewhat stupid to a certain extent, though.
Well, the thing is, like here in BC, we've had a pretty long tradition of left wing parties forming the government because you've got, Vancouver, right? And it's Vancouver, Victoria area, with a lot of the population is down on the coastline, right? And a lot of them do tend to vote left wing, even though in the interior here where I am, it's more conservative. The conservatives get most of the votes, generally speaking. Um, but the difference was like when I first started voting back in the 70s, I guess it was now, probably a little latter part of the 70s. I actually voted for an NDP government back then because they had a very, very good leader with a lot of good ideas. And actually, some of the things he brought in are still in place and they still work well. Like he put the limit on the development in the Fraser Valley, which is the main spot in the province where a lot of the food gets growing. Very rich soil, lots of fields, open fields, a lot of farms, and he put a land reserve on that area, so developers couldn't just move in and turn it all into condos and shopping centers and pave everything over and turn it into parking lots like they no doubt probably would have done if they had been allowed to. Um, so once an area is designated officially as farmland, you'd have to jump through a lot of hoops to get it taken out of that uh, conservation. So that's one good thing that left wing governments used to do. For an example, and they were generally more moderate and not. Politics wasn't as extreme back then. Like both sides on the political spectrum tended to be more moved closer to the center so they could actually, talk to each other. And basically, government back then, when I was young, it was about, being the best government to serve the people that voted, to serve the voters and the citizens of whatever area you want to talk about. But it's all about self-interest now because it's like, for example, a lot of the federal Liberal Party, there's been like about five floor crossers that have crossed from other parties to join the Liberals due to backroom deals. And of course, there's lots of speculation about how much these people were paid and, what other kind of, little benefits they got from Carney once they joined the Liberal Party and increased his number of seats in the House. So, but anyway, I could go on, but I mean, we're here to talk science fiction, I think.
Well, just one last thing before we get off that topic, even though we hate talking about it, is this coalition now a majority now, or is it still a minority in theory now?
Are you talking federally? You're talking the federal Liberals. Am I getting this correct?
Well, whatever major election happened in the past year or so.
Yeah, that would be the federal Liberals. Carney's he's been in over a year now. I think it was April of last year when he got into government, controlling the Liberal Party. Um, he's been in there over 400 days now. He's done practically nothing to make Canada better. In fact, it's a lot of areas seem to be going downhill rather than improving in any way. So
Yeah,
um,
well, my
so
question
with
was,
yeah,
sorry, Tiki. Well, my point is, from what I heard when he was elected, he was still in a minority coalition faction. Like he did not get exactly 50% or more to become
well,
the majority
yeah,
party.
yeah, they didn't have an outright majority after the election last year, but with the floor crossers, they've gotten around. They were around a few months ago, around the point where they were actually in a majority government now with those 5 members that crossed the floor from other parties. So they technically had a majority, but of course it was not a not a majority voted by the citizens. It was basically a majority achieved through wheeling and dealing in the back rooms of Parliament, which a lot of people find quite distasteful and kind of sleazy, to be honest. And a lot of the voters, of course, in those ridings that were basically betrayed by the person they voted for, and they put their trust in that person and voted for them because they were like a conservative or an NDP when they got voted in. When they moved across to the Liberals, of course the voters are not very pleased. A lot of the voters are quite annoyed because their vote basically, well, their vote doesn't mean anything when a politician can just cross the floor and join another party. It kind of nullifies the whole point in voting, really. And I think that's one reason too. There's a lot of cynicism out there amongst the population when it comes to politics now. So I personally wish that the floor crossing was not allowed, but it is, I guess, allowed. And I would like to see them have to call a by-election when somebody does that. When they cross the floor, they should have to hold a by-election and let them run again as a Liberal against whoever is a candidate for the other parties, and we'll just see how long they are a member of Parliament. Because I have a feeling if you did go the by-election route, a lot of these floor crossers would be their careers would be over, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow.
All right, so to try to get off a more depressing topic of politics, I do have an article ready to pull up for us to check out.
Okay, sure.
If you're not a semi-fan of Stargate, you may be a third wheel in this first article, though, sadly.
Well, I do know some of Stargate. I mean, I'm a big Atlantis fan, so we'll see if there's any Atlantis content.
Well, according to this author, the most important planets in Stargate explained.
Okay.
Let's see here. Either the top or bottom of the list is Atlantia and the Atlantis show.
Right. So that's the home base, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I'm quite familiar with that. Yeah. Pretty cool looking city, actually. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool city. I would give that one a vote for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a colony ship / starship. It's whatever the plot requires it to be, huh? How TV shows most happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of quite a variety of storylines that took place there. Whether it was a all-out attack from enemy forces, or just like a more of a dramatic level amongst the crew interactions. But yeah, generally the stories I thought were pretty entertaining when they were focused there.
All right, then up next on this list we have Takara and the SG-1 planet, which is the origin of the Jafar and the capital of the unofficial Free Jafar Nation in the latter half of seasons 9 and 10, even though I know Stargate fans don't like seasons 9 and 10 very much.
Yeah, I actually probably watched more of the last couple seasons because you had the Farscape crossover with Ben Browder and Claudia Black from that show crossing over to the last couple seasons of Stargate, I remember.
And I may be in the minority to say this, but I actually love the Ori as villains. Maybe it's because I come from a semi-religious family, and I know the abuse of power as certain religious figures take away from people that actually trust those institutions. So I know my personal experience how much I despise the Ori, people like that.
Well, yeah, they were pretty scary as bad guys. They, the episodes I saw with them, they were pretty all-encompassing, overpowering kind of enemy to have. So I thought they were an effective villain in the show. I personally was entertained by them.
Yeah, and there's a comic critique in shows. If your heroes are so damn powerful after defeating a whole bunch of powerful enemies, then what's the next logical step to introduce tension besides not doing personal drama or internal faction friction between the good guys to not make the good guys full on
Yeah,
malevolent anymore. In other words,
right. If they're too powerful, it can get tedious. I would definitely agree with that. Um, which is why I kind of like the Wraith as adversaries more, because the Wraith had their factions within their own community. They weren't always working together. Sometimes they were working across purposes against each other, and they had their vulnerabilities. Oh God, I can't pronounce that word today. Uh, but they had their shortcomings as well, right? So they were defeatable, but still they were quite a powerful adversary. And yeah, so I think it's better if you have an adversary that has flaws. They have weak spots. Then you can have a sort of give and take back and forth amongst the good guys and the bad guys, so to speak.
yeah, and I will say this: I'm more. I mean, call me somewhat biased to a certain extent. I do like Atlantis, but the latter half of SG1 I do enjoy more. But I'm going to be biased. When you have the grow old, then the replicators, and the ascendant beings as enemies, then those are very powerful adversaries. And the next step is what? Doing full on semi-immortal gods for the last arc or so? Because when you have good guys that can actually defeat god level or semi-god level enemies, what's the next logical step? You either do internal conflict or create a very powerful enemy, which the fan base may not actually enjoy or like very much, but it gives the heroes an actual good challenge to challenge themselves. Plus, the aura as well is just a more ideological angle to the SG1 universe too, because the aura ideology is, well, it's seductive well, I'm going to be somewhat blunt here, educated or weak-minded to actually believe their ideology, to believe that. So in other words, to defeat them, it's not only about military power or might, you have to actually defeat their ideology as well, because it is very seductive to a point. But then I will say this, the Ori twisted their own beliefs so damn much that they become an evil version of themselves, in other words.
Well, it's like absolute power corrupting, I guess, isn't it, Dan? At a certain point, any entity that becomes too powerful is always going to have a temptation of becoming more and more corrupt as its power increases. That's what I've observed. Whether you're talking about fictional worlds like this or our real world, I mean, it happens in the real world too. So, but yeah, I mean, I like an adversary that's got a culture, that's got a belief system. That's why I like Star Trek so much, is because the Klingons and the Romulans and even the Ferengi have their culture and their structure to their societies, right? Which makes them more interesting as adversaries, because we know what they're about to a certain extent, at least, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, then up next on this list we have, let's see here if I'm able to say this planet's name right. Let's see here, Abydos, and from the Stargate movie and from the show.
Okay.
Basically, this is where it all started, for the Stargate movie and for the Stargate TV show right here.
Yeah, I did see the movie many years ago. More years than I want to think about, actually, when I think about it. But I do remember the pyramid thing. Yeah, I definitely remember that shot.
Yeah, I've seen the first few seasons of SG1. This planet was the origin point of where SG1 and the Earth nations started to discover a wider Stargate network instead of just one massive Stargate that connects to the other side of the universe. They retconned that out of the movie, saying it was a full-on network in the galaxy that connected multiple gates and all that.
All right. Well, it does provide an infinite possibility for storylines, right? When you've got infinite gates and infinite worlds, you could write just about anything, when you really think about it, right? So
Yes, and then up next on this list we have Chulak, also known as Teal'c's homeworld. One of the most in this should be on the list because it's one of the homeworld of one of the most influential leaders in the Stargate franchise, Teal'c, which became a leader of the Free Jafar Nation and a leading political figure in it too.
yeah, well, he was an ally of the Stargate people, was he not?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I remember. I've seen his character like a lot. A lot of pictures of him on the internet, of course. He was like a fan favorite, was he not, with the fan base?
Um, to be honest, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure Samantha Carter was, and you know who Samantha Carter is, the
Yep.
the attractive blonde.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely remember her. Yeah. So yeah, but he was kind of a alien
Advisor, in other words.
advisor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, then up next is P3X dash 88, and if this is the planet I'm thinking of, it's where they meet the first ascendant being in the Stargate universe. Basically, well, how do I explain it? A higher life form, in other words, close to angels, in other words.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Then up next we have the protagonist's homeworld, and you know what planet that is? Of course, Earth, the
Yeah.
home of the human race, or the Tari, as they're known in the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah. Well, we did get a fair number of episodes that at least partially took place on Earth, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. And I would say I do like the developmental curve of the SGC when they develop new technology and all that, because you see the progression. I would say this from seasons 1 to probably 4. If Earth had major pushback against the Grow Old, even though the Gold Empire is too damn arrogant and prideful to actually consider Earth a threat, which was their own downfall to a certain extent, they gave Earth time to develop their own semi-advanced technology to actually compete to a certain extent against the Grow Old. And in a way, Earth also did adopt some of the Grow Old tactics, but not the brutal ones. The ones to scavenge leftover advanced technology that the Grow Old missed, or try to negotiate with other advanced civilizations that are hidden within the Milky Way galaxy, like they try to keep a little profile against the Grow Old. So they bartered for more advanced technology. They developed, and then they used that. They borrowed or rediscovered or stolen, for lack of a better term, to develop their own technology. And that's where we get the. Then from season 5 onwards, Earth itself starts to become more of a. Well, I would say by season 4, Earth was probably a semi-regional player, but by season 5 onward, they were a full-on official regional player within the Milky Way galaxy. They were.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a classic, strategy. A classic failure in strategy is when a group, an empire, or whatever you want to call them, when they make the mistake of underestimating the capabilities of their opponents, that often doesn't end up working out very well for them in the long run, right? So that's a fatal flaw. I mean, even in world history here, there's examples of empires, should I call them, political organizations, groups, parties that thought they were so powerful that they couldn't be defeated, and they totally underestimated their opponents, and then at the end they paid they paid the price, shall I say?
Yeah, and we won't go a little political. I would say, well, the Viet Cong is a major influence, probably in culture too, because it's the Vietnam War and it's the enemy underdog versus the United States military. In other words, that as a real world example.
Yeah, but the one thing there was it was America that underestimated the Viet Cong.
Yeah, and the same and for U.S. history preference, it probably was the same thing for our Independence War and from 1775 to 1781, I think it was a 7 year conflict between the British Empire and the new established American Republic before we had to restart from scratch again due to the Articles of Confederation.
When the colonies were kind of assembling into a country, or wanted to be a country, I guess I could say in the early days. Well, I mean, England had a very bad king at that time. Did they not? I remember hearing somewhere about the king was a real kind of a dumbo, to put it politely.
Well, if you're talking about King George III, I think that was his name.
Right. Well, there's that old expression, "the madness of King George," or whatever. I keep hearing when people talk about him.
Well, honestly, I'm not very well versed in that part of the world. During that era, I mean, call me biased as hell, but I'm an American, so I'm more versed in American history than British history. So call me ignorant of British history. You probably are more well versed in Canadian history / British history than I am.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't know. I'm as far as details about the Revolutionary War, I really don't know a heck of a lot. To be honest, I have to admit that. Um, I kind of have some of the general outlines and stuff like that, but as far as detailed about the Revolutionary War, no, I'm not the guy to ask. If you want somebody to tell you about the Revolutionary War, it's not me, that's for sure.
If you want a lecture on Canadian history, I'll ask you for it, though, huh?
Well, I don't know. I'll probably give you as biased a history as a lot of other people would, because I definitely have my viewpoints. Sometimes, that's sometimes it's not the easiest thing to have a strong viewpoint on something, because let's face it, it can make you enemies, and sometimes people aren't too nice when they don't like your viewpoint. So,
Well, you may find this as a low blow, but you guys are American Junior up there.
Well, I mean, I personally think I think Canadians have a superiority complex. And when I say that, I mean, a lot of Canadians there's still too many of my fellow Canadians who look down on the States. And I think what it is, Dan, it's nothing more complicated than simple jealousy, because I think a lot of Canadians are actually jealous of the achievements of the United States. And I think a lot of Canadians, of course, I'm talking probably the left-tard liberal crowd, they can't, well, that's why they don't acknowledge that our current government are basically a bunch of self-serving, jackasses. But, it's just easier for them to hate your president and, talk about the things wrong with your society currently, without them taking a look at our society and realizing we're just as messed up as things going south of the border. I mean, there's both issues on both sides of the border, social issues that things are not perfect. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, both countries have their own internal issues in their own international relations that are, to put it generously, complicated, in other words.
Well, I think the Liberals in the last 11 years since they've been in power under Trudeau and now Carney, they basically taken a very cynical, political ploy to use, your president against the other parties here in Canada. To basically, they use your president to scare people into voting liberal. And I think you got to be a real low IQ to fall for that, because I think it's garbage personally, because I don't think Trump has ever done anything to Canada personally. I think he's a damn good president. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
you know,
Besides some back and forth between our governments to get better trade deals, and Trump, well,
well,
I will criticism in this. He does give threats, but he gives threats as a negotiation tool. Like, if you don't want this, then come to the table and negotiate with me. If not, I'll slap on a tariff on your country's goods to make you cooperate with me or
well,
come to the
yeah,
table.
that's exactly right. Like any intelligent political leader, whatever country, when they're negotiating with Trump, they've got to realize that a lot of the stuff he says, you just don't take it seriously, because it's obviously negotiating tactics. It's not like he means everything he says. Like I've noticed that over the years, he certainly does not mean everything he says. He often just uses his statements to confuse the opposition and have them, running around in circles, talking about, some silly thing he said, instead of actually paying attention to the actual real thing he's intending on actually doing eventually. I mean, there's prime examples of that going on in the world right now with Trump. I mean, Trump will just say, this, and it's not going to actually happen. But like the mainstream media is terrible at it. Trump could say this, the sky is made out of pudding, and the mainstream media would probably report it as a fact. You know,
Well, I would say this. Well, Trump is a celebrity president. I mean, so he knows how to get attention and spew things out to
Mhm.
cause people to get upset and all that. But then he knows how to move around certain media outlets to get what he wants out of them. In other words,
Well, he either gets what he wants, or he just makes them look downright stupid, which Trump actually seems to really enjoy that as well. If he could make a mainstream media outlet look like a bunch of clueless morons, he's quite happy to do that. I've seen him do that, to various entities out there in the media. Um, and they deserve it. I mean, if they go to a press conference at the White House and they ask Trump really stupid questions, what do they expect they're going to get back? I mean, this is Donald Trump, or even his press secretary. You're not going to get respect out of asking a boneheaded question to the U.S. government, because the U.S. government is just got no patience for it at all anymore.
yes. And then let's say hello to Kevin State Park Adventures. Hello, Kevin. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for stopping by. Yeah.
Alrighty, and I can close out this article and try to find another one for us. So,
Okie dokie.
let's see here. Unless you want to try to stay on the topic of politics, even though we kind of do hate politics, no matter
Well,
what form that they come in.
I just find the trouble with politics is I keep going over the same things over and over again, because there's really nothing that significant that's happened. Oh, actually, there's one thing. I watched 2CTV earlier today. That's the Iranian guy that's in exile in London, and that has his 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube, and his huge support network of people doing his fact checking and working on his website and stuff. And he's my go-to channel for any news about the Middle East, because he's very, very careful to screen out the fake news garbage that is out there. So he's got a good team of fact checkers. And anyway, the one story he ran today was that they got one of the guys, I guess, that's running the sleeper cells uh, in Europe and Canada and the States. Apparently, this guy got arrested, and the reason he got the attention, well, a lot of reasons, because there was a lot of incidents over the last number of months that he was basically the ringleader of turning these sleeper cells loose to commit mayhem. But the one that caught the authorities, I guess, in the States was he was bragging about taking out Melania Trump, like ending her. And, when they start threatening the first lady and you start saying it publicly, that's what I love about how dumb these guys are, right? It's like,
yeah. Well, I can say about a certain talk show host, if you know which one I'm talking about, Jimmy Kimmel. He did he says it was a joke. Like, really, not a good joke, Kimmel. Bad move, very bad move.
Well, I mean, I grew up watching Johnny Carson, bit before your time, Dan, but there's lots of clips of his old shows on the YouTube here, and Carson really, I mean, he was at his one of his peak times when Nixon was, the whole Watergate affair was going on, right? And that was some pretty juicy political scandal. But Carson never went out and took shots at Nixon. He just wouldn't do it. Because he was smart enough to know, if you go and start taking pot shots at political leaders, you're going to lose a percentage of your audience. That's the best case scenario is you're going to lose viewers, because they're going to go, what the? Because I mean, I'm sure there were people that voted for Nixon that watched Johnny Carson back in those years, right? So he was smart enough to just generally avoid politics. Like, he'd occasionally maybe make a quick quip or something, when he was talking to a guest on the show, that maybe somebody would mention something political, and he would generally go for a joke, though, like a ha funny joke, not something nasty, right? So Carson was way ahead of guys like Kimmel, way ahead.
Yes, and I do see clips of that show too, and I would say that the ones that came after him, true. I mean, what's that famous one on Jay Leno? He did the news headlines, if you remember that stuff. He did take jabs at the Bush administration a few times, but he tried to keep things apolitical to an extent. He did.
Well, the thing is, none of these other hosts back in those times ever would have even thought about making a joke about the first lady being a widow. Like, if he doesn't get how dark and how unfunny and how basically dangerous to throw around comments like that, because let's face it, there's a lot of nutcases out there watching Kimmel that will take that stuff seriously. I mean, and bottom line, it's no damn joke. It's not funny. It has no place on late night TV. I used to watch late night TV. Carson and Craig Ferguson was probably the last one I watched. You remember Craig Ferguson at all?
Craig Ferguson.
He had the skeleton co-host. He had Jeff the skeleton off on the side.
Do you mean the Scots host? I mean, I don't know his name, but if you're talking about the guy that has a Scots accent, that he was on the Drew Carey show as well as Drew Carey's boss. If that rings a bell to you, I know who you're talking about.
Well, yeah, you could probably find a clip of Craig Ferguson on YouTube quite easily. But yeah, he was actually funny, and he was very intelligent. Like, a lot of his jokes were pretty highbrow. I'm surprised that even, he lasted as long as number of years he did last on the Late Show or whatever it was he was doing then. But yeah, he had good guests. Like, he would have actually, he'd get guests on where they'd actually talk about things, and not, most talk shows, let's face it, they come out and they're trying to sell their movie, or they're trying to sell their book, or they're trying to sell whatever they're selling that week, right? That's what happens most of the time on talk shows. Ferguson would maybe mention their book or their movie, but then they'd spend like 10 or 15 minutes talking about, other topics, right? So he was like elevating the format of late night TV. And I think very intentionally he was doing that. And I think because Craig Ferguson realized that his audience were not stupid, they actually were people that were, pretty damn smart. And they were there at the end of a long, hard day just to relax and have a few laughs and maybe learn a couple of things that the Craig and the guests discussed during their interview. And I think he nailed it. I think he got exactly hit the bullseye as to what you know a talk show host should deliver to an audience.
Yes, and I will. Well, you may hate this. I will play the other side for a point on Jim Kimmel's comment. He probably thought that the First Amendment here in the United States, freedom of speech, would protect that comment he made. And I would say, look, our First Amendment, we take it for granted, and we do allow free speech, but at some point, free speech, like it or not, does have its limits. In other words, if you get my meaning, like if you actually
Oh yeah.
call for unaliving people or mass attacks that actually threaten people's lives, would you still call that free speech, or would you call that stuff you gotta take off or rephrase it very quickly to stop it right away?
Well, you're heading very quickly into hate speech is where you're heading, and there's a whole debate about what and what is not hate speech. And I'm a strong defender of freedom of speech because that's under attack here in my country right now from our lovely government. But there is a line. Well, you probably heard the old saying, Dan. Um, you know, you don't go into a packed movie theater and halfway through the film scream fire, right?
Yes, or a boom device, if you get my meaning.
Yeah, because you're going to cause a stampede, and you're intentionally going to cause people to die if you do that, right? Because people are going to panic, and you know what happens when crowds of people panic? They run for the nearest exit, and they're not all going to make it. So there are, well, it's like with freedom comes, it's that old Spider-Man saying, right? With freedom comes responsibility, and you have to balance those two things. That's what I've always thought.
Yes. All right. Now on to our new article. Man, we keep slipping back into politics for some reason.
I know. I know. You better label this one the political stream.
Yeah. Well, at least we're keeping it civil to a point.
Well, I try to. I mean, it's so I've been on panels where people start talking about political issues and it gets pretty nasty. And I just mute myself at that point and just to kind of just listen. And I don't really participate because there's some people that have a certain axe to grind about this politician or that politician. If it's just bias, nasty, hateful bias without too much of the factual information, then I just kind of lose interest quite quickly when somebody starts talking about that.
All right. Now to go on to our next article to try to shift away from politics for at least for a
Yes.
little while.
Yes.
Here's our next topic. Another Stargate related thing. The best
Ooh.
alien races of Stargate.
Oh, this sounds more entertaining. I think I'll probably know more of this one.
Okay, then up first on the list we have the Nox, the SG-1. You probably don't know much about them, or do you know somewhat about them, PvP?
That was Data during his hippie years, was it not?
I think the actor you're thinking about is the Quark actor. That's him.
Oh, is that Quark? Oh,
yeah.
That's Shimmerman or whatever.
Yes, that's him. And the Nox appeared in season 1, and they did do semi-occurring episodes, but they were pacifists with advanced technology.
Well, they look like stereotypical hippies to my eyes.
Yeah, I guess. Well, if I had to guess, a Stargate lore and history goes stretching tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. The Nox probably were advanced enough, very close to their technology, but then they decided to reconnect to the nature side of technology, and they sort of either blended their advanced technology with nature, or they just try to live a more earthly lifestyle. If you know the meaning of that.
Oh yeah, well, we had a lot of hippies up here in BC. They mainly were located in the Kootenays, which is the valley just east of the Okanagan. And there were quite a few draft dodgers that came up and settled in Canada. And a lot of them turned into hippies, and then they settled in the Kootenays. And, you know, I mean, they were basically peaceful and they didn't cause any trouble. So basically, the government just kind of ignored them, I think, more than anything.
All right, then up next on this list we have everyone's favorite little great aliens, the Asgard. And I would say they are one of the most powerful races in the Stargate franchise. They even outstrip the Goa'uld. But the problem with the Asgard, they're too few in number, and what the Stargate lore says, they're basically are a dying race due to the constant cloning process that their bodies go through all the time. That's why.
Yeah, and also they can't get a reservation at a restaurant since they walk around naked all the time. So there's that too.
Yeah. All right, and I think
Not my best joke.
Yeah, well, you know,
they were entertaining though, right? Dan, like when they did show up.
Yeah, and I do have the Stargate lore or fan writers, they do theorize this. Do you think they were in the Stargate universe? Do you think they were the Greys in the Stargate universe where the UFO happened? That's where we get their image as the Greys right here.
I'd be pretty surprised if they weren't thinking Greys when they created the Asgard. Yeah.
Well, probably there is an in-universe explanation, and they could just, hey, let's do the Area 51 thing or the Roswell incident, saying, oh, it was the Asgard ship, a very primitive design, somehow crashed out on Earth, and then Asgard popped out, and then a pilot or a human saw them. They go, oh, look, little green men or Greys, and all that, in other words.
That would explain it, wouldn't it? Yeah. Gee, I never thought of that. That's an interesting idea, actually.
In theory, anyway. I mean, authors do explore that in the unofficial canon of SG-1.
Yeah.
Then up next we have, you would say, one of the best races in the Stargate franchise, the Wraith. Basically,
my personal favorites are the Wraith. Yes.
Yeah, a semi-high species that aren't as unified as what outsiders would lead to believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the aspects that made them so interesting. It's like remember in Next Generation when they had the what was it, the Klingon wars. Remember Worf? There was like 3 or 4 episodes where they were factions within the Klingon Empire were trying to overthrow the government, and Worf got involved, and it got really kind of very, very much fun entertainment, but also pretty messy, right? Like, and that's what I think elevates science fiction beyond like just, a lot of people think sci-fi, it's just a bunch of geeks and, techies and, people that are just into flashing lights or whatever. It's like, well, no, I mean that there is that, but good science fiction elevates the storyline to talking about, complicated conflicts within a society. And the Wraith definitely had that element. And also, I mean, I love the Wraith, the Queens. The Wraith Queens were, honestly, Dan, tell me the Wraith Queens didn't scare the hell out of you, man, because they were creepy.
They were, but then I can just hear Germ, don't bring up those stuff because then, you know how Dan is with that stuff. And how he likes his women.
Yeah, but I mean that's another. You had what I'm saying is the Wraith had aspects. They weren't one dimensional. They had different dimensions. They had the inner conflict between themselves and their own factions. They had the Queens, who that was a whole different. You could write an episode just based around one of the Queens and make it interesting. And then of course, when they were actually in combat with the Atlantis crew. Those were some great episodes I really enjoyed, and they had cool looking spaceships, and I mean I love the way they were basically like space vampires, right? They just suck the life out of people, so that was cool.
Yes, and I have read Stargate authors or fan authors actually write theories on the Wraith and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this, that from what I'm able to see on screen, there are different casts of Wraith. Like there's the Queens, then there's the Commanders, then there's the Foot Soldiers, then there's the Scientists. However order you want to put that. There's four main casts basically: the Queens, the Commanders, Scientists, and the Soldiers.
Yeah, it's the foot soldiers are pretty much cannon fodder, right? They're pretty expendable. Um, because don't they just clone them or something, or they grow them in the hives, or I forget
Yes.
exactly with the soldiers, but they're like real low. They're like the worker bees, in a bee colony, right? They're just there to work and then make honey and die, basically. And the soldiers, they're not much above that because, well, the soldiers are kind of mindless. They're just there to fight, and it's not like they're the soldiers are not like reading Shakespeare or anything. Like these guys are just there to kill the enemy, and that's why they didn't even practical. They had the masks on because they didn't have to do all the makeup, but kind of the whole mask thing with the soldiers kind of denoted their low rank within Wraith civilization.
Yes, and I will take a jab at the military. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, the military can come off as dumb sometimes, but then how should I put this? The military does have its own issues and own priorities. Like there are cannon fodder soldiers in every military, and then there's the intelligent officers or commanders that make the major decisions. There are the grunts in every military as well, and the soldiers that just follow orders to get things done. In other words, you may hate me saying this, like good soldiers follow orders, and I can just hear the same excuse. Well, they did that during a very dark period during the Second World War. It's like certain factions of soldiers, if you know which ones I'm talking about, saying they just followed orders and they committed horrible atrocities, and they were just following orders. In other words,
Well, that's always the excuse, isn't it? And the thing is, I mean, a lot of them probably just were following orders because I imagine a lot of the grunts, as you called them, they weren't aware of the bigger picture of what was going on. They were just trying to survive, I would think. So it's not like I can hate. Let's put it this way: I can hate some of the things they did to people without actually hating the soldiers because the soldiers were, in a sense, a lot of them probably were just following orders. Sadly, because I think they probably didn't have any access to any actual strategy, information about the strategies that the higher up, command was putting into play, right? So it depends what armor you're talking about too. Like I would argue, like the Americans, the U.S. Soldiers are probably highly skilled, highly trained. You know, generally, even if they come up from a working class background, by the time they go through the training and the education, and they probably take a path within the military. Maybe they're in communications. Maybe they're a foot soldier. Maybe they end up flying a jet. Maybe whatever they go branch off into eventually once they get through their basic training and start to pick something that interests that they're have an ability for. I would think the American troops generally are very, very highly trained. At least from what I've observed, they seem to be quite skilled. So it depends on the army. Like some armies, there's just more numbers than intelligence. Like, you know, just you have like the Russian army back in the time you were talking about. It wasn't so much that they were highly skilled or highly trained. It was just like there was millions and millions and millions of them, and it was sheer numbers that they had their success with because it didn't matter how many people they lost; they just keep coming, more and more. There's just more and more of them every day, right? And I don't care how organized an enemy is, if you don't have limitless resources, eventually you're going to have your back against the wall when you're fighting something like that. Anyway, sorry, politics again. Shit.
well, not exactly politics, but I'm talking about that generally because it's how the Wraith operate. In other words, to a certain extent, that's why I like to Well, when you try to avoid it, but I also like to do a little real world examples to try to give context to how the Wraith operate a little bit, because I
Oh
get that
yeah.
vibe from the Wraith a lot. They have a lot of camouflage soldiers because they just don't care about them. In other words,
Well, they're just creating more of them, right? That was kind of
yes,
my Russian analogy. They just keep making more and more, and there's so many of them that they don't have any real value. It seems. But yeah, I mean, obviously, even when we're talking fictional characters like this, the writers are drawing from our world, from the good writers do. The good writers draw from the real world, and they draw from history, even if they don't specifically tie it into specific history. They kind of generalize it into, things that have happened in our real world, and that's why I like a lot of these older shows, is because you go back to 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the what was this, 2000 or something, I can't remember. um, but until the last 20 years, it seems, when the writers now have no life experience as the problem, basically, right? So yeah.
yeah, and let's see here, and let's see here. What the was I gonna say before I lost my train of thought? Anyway, yeah, and I would say the Wraith. Uh, the reason that caused their semi division is their scarcity of resources, and that's why they were so divided. And well, the Earthlings of Earth, they did reawaken the Wraith too early for the human population of the Pegasus galaxy to recover to feed them. So that's what caused the scarcity of resources and the Wraith to infight a lot. Because, well, like it or not, either an abundance or scarcity of resources will cause politicking and infighting, no matter what faction you are in. In other words,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
when you have very little food to go around and you have a lot of mouths to feed, you either have to, well, I'm going to be very, very dark here, thin out the population or find another alternative food source that can substitute the one that's going bad or have shortages of.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing with the wraith. They saw humans as a food source, right? So
Yes.
I mean, basically any living thing, anything they encounter, they probably would use as a food source.
Yeah, and I'm going off memory here, but you probably know too. But the reason why the Wraith woke up in mass is they thought Earth was in the Pegasus galaxy and Earth had a huge population. Like, if I had to guess, probably, well, I'm going to throw a number here. Probably the whole entire human population of the Pegasus galaxy, if you want to go by that, probably was at the bare minimum at least a few 100 million if you really want to push it. The total Pegasus galaxy population, a few 100 million humans, all on those thousands of planets that the Wraith could control. And each planet I had to say, probably at least a few hundred to a few thousand humans per planet. To multiply that by the number of planets, you get millions to the hundreds of millions of people. But compare that to Earth, that's just a small fraction of what Earth's population is. We have, well, if you go off of the second universe, we had roughly 6.5 billion people on our planet in a galaxy about the third the size of our Milky Way galaxy, if I had to guess, or smaller than that. Had a human population of in the hundreds of millions, if I want to be generous, in the human population of that galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a small percentage compared to Earth. So Earth would have been the big thing for them, for the Wraith to capture, if they could have.
Yeah, and the main issue of that show is because the Wraith technology is actually, it's their one gap that they can't solve. That's why they try to capture the Atlantis or Atlantean technology, because they have more advanced star drives, because the Wraith are interstellar level star drives, basically just travel between across the galaxy within a few months or a few weeks, not across the massive galactic void. I'm going to say, well, in the show it says the gap between the Pegasus and the Milky Way galaxy is 3 million light years, and the Pegasus galaxy is, I'm going to say, for what we consider, somewhere between a fifth
Wow.
to a third of the size of the Milky Way galaxy. That's about come on, do the math. 20,000 light years to 30,000 light years across, and a 3 million wide galactic gap with very little to no food sources, and they have to stop periodically to feed. So unless they bring massive supply ships of humans on hand to feed off of, good luck trying to reach Earth in the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not using the stargates, you're still talking pretty primitive travel, really, pretty limited travel.
Yeah, let's see here. All right, then on to
Well,
the next
I
faction.
think my point's been proven about how interesting the Wraith are, though, right, Dan? Because we probably spent about 20 or 30 minutes talking about them.
Yes, it's nice to talk about enemies that, well, they're also very, well, semi-political again here. They're very left-wing in the organizations, in other words, and that's what makes them interesting, because you see how true left-wing or far-left organizations can operate and have their own flaws and their own issues where they have to solve their own problems creatively or just basically do whatever they can to survive.
Well, yeah, I think basically the Wraith are kind of a criticism of left wing culture, because I mean they're not called the Hive for no reason, right? Like you kind of think of left wing political isms, and they are kind of a hive culture too, because they definitely have a structure where there's a few on top that benefit, and then the rest are just basically there to be, to be fodder, basically to just do whatever the ruling elite want them to do, because they don't really have rights. So yeah, you could even see the Wraith Queens as a criticism of a monarchy in a way, right? Because
Yes.
they, so
So
there's definitely a criticism of those cultures there.
yeah, so if I had, well, for a political spectrum for the Wraith, if I had to guess, they probably are. I mean, they're not pure high species of purely far left collectivist, but you would may disagree with my point there. But they're also, just like you pointed out, they have queens, so they are semi absolute monarchy. So if you split the difference, you make them extremely centrist authoritarianism. In other words.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of. There's not a lot of individuality or freedom within the Wraith culture. It seems to me. There's only the occasional, upper echelon Wraith that does kind of break free and start to, think for themselves and think on their own. And I'm trying to think, what's the character eventually we get that one Wraith guy that is very
Michael,
interesting. Michael. Well, no, there's another one, isn't there? There's Michael.
Todd.
Todd's the one. Yeah, Todd's the one I'm thinking of, because Todd actually, he actually, I really like Todd as a character. He's one of my favorite characters in Atlantis, actually, because, I mean, instead of keeping him as a one dimensional adversary, they actually developed him into an interesting character in the episodes he was in, because he did kind of become like a strange ally to the Atlantis crew, right? Even though he wasn't 100% trustworthy necessarily, there were episodes where they kind of had to work together to achieve what either goal they wanted, and sometimes their goals were completely different, but they still had to work together to advance them, right? So I really think Todd he's one of my favorite characters in Atlantis. He's a really good character.
Yeah, and I would say this. When it comes to intelligence, I mean, the we are in the TV show. We see the perspective of the Wraith being outwitted by the human scientists or engineers or military constantly. But if you actually see the Wraith as, well, intelligence, they are very intelligent. I mean, and they are an interstellar civilization, but I would say their intelligence is semi-limited compared to humans, because they're not as imaginative or ingenuitous as humans are. But then I can just hear the criticism, like the Wraith do develop an new techniques and new technologies while fighting us, the Earthlings, in the show, but they're not as adaptive or as imaginative as us humans are. In other words,
Well, they don't have a culture that allows that. I mean, they're so heavily structured, and well, they're a rigid culture. They're not very flexible in their thought processes, right? You know, it's like, what's that line in Wrath of Khan where Spock goes, Khan's only capable of two-dimensional thinking. He's only thinking good, bad, up, down, left, right. It's either like, at least for a guy like Khan, it's a yes or a no, right? There's no gray area that makes it a three-dimensional thought process, and I think that's what Spock was actually hinting at, right, when he made that comment. And it's the same with the Wraith. I think a lot of them are not capable of three-dimensional thinking. They're only thinking, win, lose, survive, advance, defeat the enemy. I mean, that's the focus of a lot of them have, because even a lot of the commanders are kind of simplistic, right? Like, some of the ones we do meet, they're not exactly, complicated, complex thinkers, I would say, which is one reason I like Todd so much, because he does grow into the capability of having strategies that are more complicated than a lot of his fellow Wraith, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's another false side of a high society. You have very narrow channels, because the semi-brains of the society are the queens. They are the major infrastructure of the Wraith hive society. They are the brains.
Well, I mean, everything revolves around them, right?
Yes. All right, then up next on this list, boy, of the Wraith. I'm gonna say 20 plus minutes on the Wraith, but it is interesting talking about them.
I just think they're my favorite character because they are that interesting.
All right, then up next is the semi-primitive yet somewhat intelligent, the Unas from SG-1. Yeah, they were okay for a species, but they weren't exactly the best flushed out.
I have no comment on them because I'm not familiar with them. So,
all right, then up next we have everyone's favorite snake allies, the Tok'ra. Probably have no comment on that too. PvP probably, huh?
Is that just the first series SG-1?
Yes.
Okay, I'll pass.
All right, then finally we have the Jafar, basically the slave armies of the Gold Empire before they were able to rebel and get their freedom from the Gold Empire.
Okay, well, once again, I guess it's your comment because I don't have much to say.
Yes, and I would say this for the Jafar, they did develop their culture pretty well in the latter seasons of, say, season 8, 9, and 10. They developed the Jafar culture pretty well, but then I do have a criticism for that. At the way the Jafar nation is structured and all that, I do write some fan fiction, yes. I am a fanboy of Stargate, but then
Okay.
From the vibe I'm getting from the Free Jafar Nation or the Jafar in general, they are very. They don't have a strong direction to go by, because they are a conquered people. They were exploited by the Gold Empire, so they don't have very real experience in governing themselves very well. They are trying to do that with the Free Jafar Nation, but then even that was very messy. But then you can just hear nation building is messy and complex too. But then I would say, okay. But I would say this: the Jafar Nation, if I had to guess, and the vibe I'm getting from them, they're heading towards a very semi or very bloody civil war, because there is factions within the Free Jafar Nation that will not compromise with each other or all that. And plus, there's no actual semi-government structure for the Jafar to fall back or to grab onto. I mean, they could try to model themselves off of the Gold Empire, but then they were their former slavers and they oppressed them. So do you really want to go back to those ways where you suppress your opposition, or you do all that to do another rebellion against you essentially becoming the new masters of the galaxy? Or do you try to develop another structure that's it makes compromise to a certain extent to not become full on what the Golden Empire was? And that's the feeling I'm getting from them. There's going to be either a very bloody Jafar civil war, probably, if they were to done a spin-off show or a continuation of that show. The Free Jafar Nation would have fallen into a civil war between, well, in my story, I'm fanboying here, but then in my fan fiction, there's a few factions of the Jafar Nation. There's the liberal faction of the Free Jafar Nation, that coalition, and there's the traditionalists in that faction. There's the militarists, basically the far righters, and there's the progressives, basically left wingers. 4 factions of the Free Jafar Nation in my story, and that's the feeling I'm getting from the Jafar Nation. Either a 2-way civil war or a 4-way civil war between different factions vying for the future of the Free Jafar Nation. And I would say this: the liberals and traditionalists in my story, they have enough common ground to form a common alliance to fight against the other extremes, which is my story, the far right and the far left. But then the moderates usually do have a common enemy, no matter what extreme of the political spectrum you're on, because extremes usually unite the moderates or the common sense people enough to eliminate them as a threat.
Wow, but they never actually had that in any episodes, Dan.
Yeah.
That sounds like a brilliant idea for a mini-series about them. I could see like a 4-episode mini-series of their civil war. If that was done by, the people that know about SG1, and if you could get some of the writers and some of the old crew back, I mean, it's probably a long shot now, I'm guessing, but if you could get the right people, if they did it well, I'm sure millions of SG fans would watch that for sure.
Yes, and also in my little fan fiction story too, Teal'c and other ones that are the moderates or semi-progressive to a certain extent, even by Jafar standards, I do have them fall back on Earth, aka the Tari, for government advice, or at least try to get a formal blueprint how to form a semi-coherent government. And that's why in my story I have Teal'c with the help of Daniel Jackson. Daniel Jackson gives some books on governance and government systems to take back with him to the Free Jafar Nation to study and try to form their own version of galactic government that fits the Free Jafar Nation. Try to at least give them basically a foundation to study on, to study, have another system to study and try to develop, saying, okay, we have blueprints of another system here from our allies in theory, but we don't fully trust them. They have different theories because they're more socially advanced, and I would say yes. And I would say this: the Jafar are semi-primitive compared to Earth's civilizations, but then I would say that Daniel Jackson could give books to Teal'c and other ones, like theories on, well, you may hate me saying this, fascism, communism, liberalism, then conservatism and all that, or some other ideologies like corporatism, then theocratic theories or all that for them to study, saying, you know what, there's a whole bunch of theories that Earth offers in these books. Let's study them and see which one suits us better. And they may come to, well, a semi-conservative centrism for their galactic nation, because they are, well, they are conservative in a lot of ways, but they're also somewhat centrist to liberal in a lot of ways. The Jafar are, but if I had to lean one way, they're more centrist, conservative in their viewpoint, probably. So probably ideologies that match the centrist conservative viewpoint, in that probably will fit the Free Jafar Nation better. So if you call that classical liberalism or somewhat conservative nature, and along those lines, the ideologies that fit them are those. But then what type of government structure? Well, if you want to do what other liberal democracies or conservative movements do, they have, at least in theory, three branches of government or a semi-constitutional republic. But then, since the future of our nation is somewhat more primitive, they could do a somewhat duopoly in the government, like a head of state that has half the power, then another body that has the other half of the power. That way they check themselves to make sure either or does not abuse their power.
Well, yeah, there's a lot there, a lot to think about there, I guess.
Yeah, and you may think, wow, Daniel, sci-fi is nerding out a lot. Yeah, well, when you're a sci-fi fan or you are bored, basically out of your whole life, you do a lot of thinking on your favorite sci-fi TV shows or a lot of ideas that you may find boring in school, but then you ponder when you get older, or you have time to actually think about it. It's like, that's actually interesting. You may use that for a story or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I once again, I mean, I guess I'll restate this, but I think science fiction is generally a very misunderstood and undervalued genre within fiction. Because let's face it, Dan, there's still millions of people around the world who think it's just for kids, or it's silly, or it has nothing to do with reality, or it's just goofy crap. Name your prejudice. I'm sure there's millions of people out there that have one against science fiction, right? Which I've never understood, but I guess it comes down to just not being enlightened and informed about a topic, which these people obviously are not. I think science fiction is one of the great fictions because, it talks about possible realities. It talks about current realities. It examines realities of the past, the present, and what could be the future. It often warns us about making mistakes, and of course, our leaders don't pay attention to science fiction because I'm seeing them make mistakes in the real world right now that people like Stanley Kubrick are talking about in 2001. If you know what I'm talking about, there, Dan, I bet you do.
The threat of AI or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's like the HAL 9000, right? I mean, they're developing stuff like this, and I don't know how many times I've heard people talking about how, they tried something with AI and it totally messed up. Like it just totally messed up. It didn't get it right. And the thing is, you can program you can program a program to try and think like a human, but it's not a human. And it's like, Dr. McCoy used to say in Star Trek, it's like, no computer is ever going to replace people. It's like, I don't care how brilliant a computer is. It's a computer. It's a machine. It doesn't have human thoughts. It doesn't have human emotions. It doesn't live. It doesn't die. It's not an entity like a human is. And
it doesn't have experience. In other words, is what you're trying to get at too. Huh?
Well, you can program experience. Well, remember in Terminator, right? Terminator 2. Or actually, I'm thinking. Actually, no, I'm not. It's not Terminator. I'm thinking of Blade Runner. Sorry, in Blade Runner, where the replicants were programmed with memories that were instilled in them, and they weren't their actual memories because they only had the 5-year lifespan, so they didn't live long enough to actually create memories. So the developers, as as they called it, gifted them with memories, somebody else's memories, to cushion their mentality. Because as it said in the film, after a number of years, they might develop their own emotional responses, which of course the authorities consider to be extremely dangerous, and it does prove so in the film. So, it's like AI now. You could program feelings, you can program thoughts, you can program anything you want to program, but the ultimate end of the day, it's still a computer program. It's still mechanical. It's not flesh and blood. Humans. That's one thing about humans. We have, like Einstein said, an infinite gift for stupidity, right? As Einstein said, but we also have an infinite gift for, getting it right and thinking it through and analyzing something and discovering when maybe we were wrong and maybe we made a mistake and maybe we need to go down a different pathway, so to speak, to try and find something better. And because one thing about humans is we have that sense of doubt. We have that. We have weakness in us. We all have weakness. Even some people don't want to admit it. Everybody's got an Achilles heel hidden away somewhere, and that's one thing that makes humans want to improve themselves because they realize that they're flawed, and unless they're totally arrogant, which some people are totally arrogant, unbelievably so. Most humans, realize that they have weaknesses and they could do better and they could improve, if they put their mind to it. Whereas a computer program, you could even program it with guilt. You could even program it with not being totally 100% confident. But I got to say, I bet any computer program, no matter what you program into it, eventually is going to end up, thinking it's got the answers. And it ends up like 2001, where it had answers. The only problem was they were bad answers.
Yes, and I would say this to sci-fi in general too, or other genres. They also allow us to explore topics that we are uncomfortable to discuss, or
Oh, yeah.
in day-to-day life or in political discussions, because sci-fi in general, it is an outlet to discuss heavy topics, even though it's disguised as sci-fi fiction. I mean, if you look at some of the famous sci-fi franchises and all that, they explore some fans will say, "Oh, it's for kids." Like, really? Have you seen some of the heavy themes that some of these franchises explore? You call that child friendly? Oh boy, no, it's not. And I'm gonna fall back to my Star Wars theme here. Like, I call it A New Hope, but then you may call it Star Wars. But Star Wars explores heavy themes on imperialism, authoritarianism, or totalitarianism that adults and audiences can see. And then there's other things like Empire Strikes Back. It's the cost of war, the cost of loss, and the sense of losing. How if you hit someone back, even if it is the bad guys, if they have the muscle or the will, they will. And here's the name: strike back harder and faster than you could ever imagine. That's what Empire Strikes Back shows. And Return of the Jedi shows the good guys trying to bounce back of that. Like, okay, we've seen the best shot the Empire can do. Now, what can we do to muster up to resist or to counteract that? And what do? They try to develop a more positive a message of hope, of trying to combat that the best they can, and all that.
Well, yeah. I mean, people who think science fiction is simply, laser guns and women are running around half naked have no clue what the hell they're talking about because they actually probably never have seen anything science fiction. Because yeah, I mean, it is about the big themes, like like an empire that wants to rule over everybody, or just I don't know. There's so many themes in science fiction. I don't even want to start trying to even discuss them at this point in our time here. But I guess it's basically the complexity of science fiction that keeps me coming back to watch it, is because it is endlessly surprising. If it's good and if it's well done, you can take so many different variations on the main themes. I mean, what's that old expression that there's only so many themes in fiction that exist? Like, Shakespeare created a lot of it, I guess, but there's only so many tropes, so many themes,
So many stories.
so many stories and they've probably all been told already. the challenge is to tell them in a interesting, in a new, fresh and interesting way, where you kind of, can tell a story that has been told before, but you put new things into it that make it its own thing, right? So you're not feeling like you're just watching something recycled.
Yeah, and
Uh,
there's another theme that I see in Star Wars, and I mean I see it semi a lot though, is the David and Goliath analogy. If you know where I'm going at, the rebellion is it's David, the Empire is Goliath. And the sci-fi do draw off of a lot of biblical inspired stories too in their themes too. Even though they say they're not semi religious, they may use stories in the Bible as lessons for the audience or and all that to say, look, this message is as old as time. You may have seen it before, but it's repeating itself constantly. In other words.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And if you were to classify the story between Kirk and Khan, what is that story or theme? In other words, I mean, just basically revenge, or what exactly is it? I mean, I get there's more of a deeper connection besides just revenge, like Khan and Kirk have between each other. What is it?
I think revenge is at the center of it. I don't think it's a coincidence that, when when they land on Khan's planet, where everything was destroyed because its orbit shifted, as Khan tells them. We got Chekhov and the captain of the Chekhov's ship. I mean, we get a quick look at the bookshelf, and we got titles like Moby Dick on there, and it's no coincidence that Moby Dick is on Khan's reading list, because it is about revenge against the white whale in the sense, and Kirk would be the white whale, you know. So it is, I think, a large part, and I think that's why Khan fails, is because as Spock says, he is about two-dimensional thinking, and he's basically all about revenge, because Khan's second in command, tells him point blank. He says, "We've got the Genesis device, we've got a starship, we could go anywhere in the universe and colonize a planet and take over and build an empire." But Khan is not thinking clearly enough to realize that's a good idea, actually. We could take over go to any half-ass planet that isn't developed, and they could take them over in a month, probably, right? But no, he doesn't care about building an empire, or ruling people or being successful anymore. It's all about Kirk. It's all about defeating Kirk, because what Kirk did when he abandoned him to that world, and of course, Khan's wife was killed by those lovely little ear parasites. Boy, that's lots of fun. It's like Khan is bent on revenge. That's always the way I've seen that movie. There's a lot of other things. I mean, there's sidebars about aging. About when McCoy brings Kirk at his birthday, he brings him a pair of eyeglasses, which that always makes me chuckle, because, we're talking like what, 1981 or whatever when that movie came out, and of course now we've got you can get your eyes, you can basically have your eyes corrected surgically, and you don't need glasses anymore. My cousin had it done like 20 years ago, right? He used to wear glasses, and he doesn't wear them anymore because he went through the whole, I can't remember the procedure, because
Laser eye surgery or
something like that. Yeah, but they have to, like, I don't know, they do something with your pupils, and it's like gross. And anytime you're talking about surgery on my eyes, I get
queasy.
I'm like, okay, yeah, queasy, yeah, good word.
Well, I would say this, yes. That's one theme in the movie, but then another theme I see popping up a lot in that movie, and also Space Seed, if that's the name of the episode I'm thinking of, It's about Khan proving himself that he's superior. He's superior to Kirk, or he is Kirk's equal, in other words. And somehow, this less superior man, Kirk, is able to outwit him and outdo him at every turn. And Khan hates that. He wants to prove himself against Kirk. He wants to say, "I'm superior, Kirk. I'm able to beat anyone, but you were able to beat me, even though you're inferior, and somehow you were able to beat me. You son of a bitch! Why the hell are you able to beat me even though I'm superior and think faster and quicker? Why are you able to beat me, Kirk? Why?"
Well, there's that line in the movie where Kirk says to Khan, "I'm laughing at the superior intellect." Remember that line?
Yes.
And it's exactly nails it. That's what it's about. Khan could not handle being, defeated by Kirk in the space seed episode. He could not deal with it. I mean, maybe if the planet hadn't shifted its orbit and it had stayed,
Habitable.
yeah, habitable, maybe he would have forgotten about Kirk, in 5 or 10 years. But it didn't work out that way. So basically, since this planet was, all but destroyed, he had revenge was the only thing that kept him going. I think for those years, right? Which is sad, but I think that's pretty much the main point of the movie. But there are other things. I think a big part of Star Trek 2 is the friendship between the characters. Obviously, McCoy, when he brings him the eyeglasses, that's a touching moment. And McCoy tells him, get your command back before you become part of this collection, and it's absolutely right. Because things never give you happiness. I've had lots of collectibles over the years, and you know what? I ended up selling a lot of them off because I had a box of comics, and I made a lot of money when I sold those because I had 60s and 70s comics, and I was getting like anywhere between 20 to $50 for each comic for a while there on eBay. Like, and I realized too, comic collectors are a dying breed. Most of us that are hardcore collectors are in our 60s now. In 20 years, there's going to be no market for comic books anymore. I have a feeling. So that's why I sold a lot of them off. And the main reason I sold them, though, Dan, is because I realized I had a box full of comics that I hadn't opened the box in 20 years, and I hadn't read them in 20 years. And I'm like, what's the point of keeping this if I'm not ever going to read them again? So I'd rather sell them to somebody who's actually going to enjoy them. Anyway, boy, did I get off topic.
Yeah,
It's
and
all.
yeah, and
Go ahead.
that's how most franchises are nowadays, especially ones that have been ruined by certain agendas. There's the old fans or the semi-new old fans, or whatever you call them. I mean, you may call me. I'm a hardcore classical Star Wars fan. Some would say, "Well, you probably are in your 40s, 50s, or 60s." Like, oh, spoiler alert, guys! I'm not that old, and PvP can test this. Compared to him, I'm a young whippersnapper. I'm going on 30, and PvP's going on 69. So I'm in my 30s, and I still love that stuff. You may call me old for liking that stuff, but look, compared to me, I'm actually pretty young, and I'm still into this sci-fi stuff. But sadly, with all that's going on in the franchise I love, I have quietly divorced myself from that stuff that I have just come to hate the new stuff I have.
Well, I'm at the point where I just don't care anymore. Like, I think even worse than hating something is just not caring about it.
Apathy.
Yeah, apathy, just walking away and saying bye. Because that's where I'm at with Star Trek right now. After that Academy disaster, I'm like, I'm done. Uh, anyway, I just want to finish up my thoughts on Wrath of Khan. I think one obviously main theme is friendship, and the way Spock sacrifices himself at the end of the movie to save the ship and the crew. And it's like, what's the line? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one, or whatever it is. Like, that's a great line. Boy, I wish our politicians would watch that movie and get that, because now our politicians are doing the exact opposite. It's like they put the one above the many, and it's a huge mistake. But yeah, that's to me that's actually probably the most important. I mean, I love the con, battle scenes and all that. And it's great. It's great. And Ricardo is fantastic with that chest. I love how people for years thought it was like a fake rubber chest or something. I like laughing and laughing. And it's like, no, he was like probably 60 or whatever. I can't remember. He was getting old, and he just worked out. He just pumped iron and just worked out for hours, hours and hours, and kept himself in fabulous condition, like great shape. Man, I've never looked that damn buff, damn it. uh but it's just got a lot of good themes running through it. And you know probably anybody watching it for the first time should actually get a paper and a pen and write down the main themes of the movie, because if you don't, you're probably not going to follow all of them, because they do get intermixed through the film. And by the way, I've got to check this out, because there's some chick who posted today on YouTube, Dan, that Wrath of Khan is a bad movie.
Oh boy.
She actually posted Wrath of Khan is a bad movie, and she's got like 70,000 views in the last day. Like, I'm thinking it's either clickbait or this chick is so delusional. I'm going to watch it later. I want to wait till I'll watch it this evening, when I want to relax and when I need a laugh. But I'm betting it's going to be a painful experience. I have a terrible feeling.
I have been and always shall be your friend.
I've never heard anybody say Wrath of Khan is a bad film. Like, not one person. I've heard people that say, "Oh, it's not my cup of tea," or maybe it's not my favorite. But a bad movie, really?
Yeah, and I would say it is a good movie, but then you may hit me says every good movie has its flaws. I mean, we may not call them major flaws, but there are teeny tiny flaws in every good movie. There is.
Well, I mean, there's nothing really that exists that doesn't have a flaw.
Yeah.
What flaws would you say are in Wrath of Khan then?
Well, we sort of discussed this a stream ago, but one of the main little peeves, is they say we're the only ship in the quadrant, and I was saying, you see what I'm getting at. Either the Star Trek lore was not fully established then, or the writer was just ignorant, or they just said, you know what, fuck it. And they're the main character ship. Let's just say they're the only ship in the quadrant, in the mythic quadrant, either a few systems or just not hardly at all anything.
I think we did mention that in the previous stream. Actually, no, it should jog my memory there, Dan. And I think, I think it's a Star Trek trope. Because how many times are we watching Star Trek and it's like, oh, the Enterprise is the only ship that can handle the emergency, or however they frame it, right? And it's always the Enterprise. It's like, well, what about one of those other 12 Constitution class starships? Aren't they ever patrolling anywhere? It's like it's always but of course it's Star Trek and it's the Enterprise and it's Kirk and Spock and blah blah, and of course it's a trope. But I just think it's a trope. I roll my eyes and go with it, basically.
Yeah, well, if I had to guess, it's probably because the writer probably says, you know what? Let's just say they're the closest ship to the incident to make them the main characters of that episode, probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have a movie if Starfleet Command, sent a message to Uhura, and it's like, hey, you guys don't have to bother. We got another Constitution class starship that'll take care of it. Why don't you guys just go to Riser or something and have a party? Like, hey, good times. It wouldn't be much of a movie, so
Yes, all right. And since we're approaching the latter half of the hour, I'm going to start wrapping up my stream. So PvP,
okay.
If you want to give a little promotion about your channel, like what music do you cover? What are your favorite artists? I mean, you don't have to go full on detail. Just give a brief promotion about your channel, what type of music you cover,
I can do that.
Artists, but don't overdo it though, please. Just give a basic promotion if you want to.
Mainly 60s, 70s, 80s. A sprinkling of 1950s early rock, a little bit of 90s, maybe some grunge thrown in the mix there. but it's mainly 60s, 70s, and 80s. All kinds of genres, rock, glam, punk, you name it. You'll probably find something there for your listening enjoyment. So I'll keep it brief.
All right. Well, you could do a little bit more. Any favorite artists you could try to get your audience attracted to for your playlist for them to get interested? Maybe you could do a few artist shout outs for those old songs if you want to.
Well, number one is always David Bowie. He's my favorite solo artist of all time. Um, like you realize David Bowie had more than 50-year career. Like he was like 54 years working at music. Like that's amazing in itself. But they actually managed to make so much great music is even more astounding. So yeah, Bowie number one. Oh gosh, it's so hard to even think about a number two. I mean, I would recommend a lot of the '60s British invasion bands. It's pretty hard to go wrong with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I'd also throw in the Who and the Kinks. A lot of those '60s British bands were really making some great records back then. So yeah, I would go with that and check out '70s punk around 1976, I believe, when the Ramones put out their first album. I would highly recommend '70s punk with the Ramones, the Damned, just lots of great bands. Early Blondie is great. Like Blondie she kind of went mainstream after the first three albums, but if you check out her first two in particular, there's a lot of punky stuff in those albums, and they're actually really fun, really energetic. I think that's early Blondie. I think is some of the best Blondie personally.
All right. And PvP, are you doing a live stream of your own pretty soon, or did you do that already?
I I am still kicking it around in my head to start doing watch parties of Farscape because I was doing them with Curtis on Sundays, but Curtis is working like such long hours. I mean, the guy's working like 70 hours a week, right? So he gets one day off, which is Sunday, and he hasn't been on a Sunday stream for about 3 weeks now because he's just too exhausted. So I actually talked to him on Facebook the other day, like probably yesterday or the day before, I forget. And I mentioned to him, hey, I'm thinking of just doing like Farscape on a Friday, maybe, right before Gorilla does his Waltons, like something like that. But I'm still kicking around in my head trying to, because I'm not really certain at this point. I think Lemon Pie said he would moderate for me if I go get that set up. So that's good to know. And you know, I because I love you've seen Farscape, right? Or have you not seen Farscape?
I've seen most of it.
I love that show. After the original Star Trek TOS, I think it's my favorite science fiction show because it's just so damn complicated. It's so creative. The cast is good. There's a chemistry between the cast, the stories, the writers really, I love a show that never gives me something I'm expecting. If you can give me an episode where that something happens, it's the last thing I saw coming. Now that is fun. That is entertaining to me. Because there's so many shows that are predictable to the point of boredom, right? And Farscape managed to avoid that most of the time. It had the occasional, bad episode that I didn't like, but overall, 88 episodes, I'd say most of them are pretty good, and some of them are amazing. Like, takes a while to get going because season one, it's all about setting up the characters and developing, the universe is taking place in. But by the time we get to the end of season one, when Scorpius comes into the picture, that's when the show really starts to take off, as far as I'm concerned. So,
And of course, the ever so talented and drop dead gorgeous Claudia Black too is never a disappointment, is she?
no, I don't mind. I don't mind watching Claudia. Hey, don't forget Virginia Hay too, as the blue priestess, because we get was it episode 4 when she drops her clothes and we get a full on ass shock of Virginia. It's like wow, you've seen that, right? If you had seen that, you would remember it. Believe me. She does. She drops her entire. She's wearing a robe or whatever, some priestess stuff, right? And the bad guy, well, not a bad guy, but he's the adversary. They got him locked up on the ship, and he exposes himself full frontal to her, and he's like, "Hey, take a look at this," or whatever. Like he's bragging, right? And she looks down at what she looks at, and she's like, "Oh, quite respectable, for your age," she says, right? It doesn't faze her at all because she's a fourth level priestess. Like you gotta impress her, like to really get under her skin. So then she says, "Okay, I'll take a look at this," and then she drops her clothes, and he's like, and he's getting the full frontal, and we're getting the full butt cheeks, and I gotta say, it's pretty nice. I gotta say, man.
Yeah. Well, that episode is blanking. I think I seen it once, but then it's blanking out of my memory. Tell me, is this look going? Oh shit! I'm out of my league here.
I think it's episode 4, but I can't remember the title to save my life right now, Dan, unfortunately.
All right. Well, as for me, I'm the Sci-Fi Historian. On this channel, I cover different sci-fi TV shows or movies. I do the watch parties on this usually on Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific time with my co-host, but sadly he's no longer able to do it, so I usually do this by myself. And I do the watch parties on this channel Saturdays between 2 and 4 p.m. Pacific time. I try to upload a new video on this channel towards the end of the beginning of next week. And I do cover different franchise lore and characters and all that, hence my YouTube handle, Sci-Fi Historian. I do cover different stuff. And I do have another channel called Ultimate Sorcerer Dan. That one I cover Japanese anime and cartoons in general. And right now we're in the middle of season 4 of Shield Hero. We just started that season, and I do the watch parties there on Fridays, 8 p.m. Pacific time, usually after Girls Walton streams. And until next time, everyone, live long and prosper, or may the force be with you. Until next time, everyone, good afternoon, day or night, wherever you are, and good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.